order to respect the wishes of everybody that are part of this consultation, again, I'm going to ask that you refrain from video or audio recording.
If we're consulting parties, then we're requesting, and let me make it formal, we're formally requesting that we're allowed to record this for our records.
To protect the rights of other consulting parties who have requested otherwise, we are going to request that nobody video or audio record the meeting.
There's no reason for us to sit here and go through all of these processes if we don't have our actual mana'o recorded. The other thing is what about what Maui said? See, we don't get to hear that. And the record that is being taken is not verbatim. I have requested that they be verbatim. And the reason is because someone who's taking copious notes is not able to translate what we mean when what we say is what we're saying. There is a provision under Section 106 for Native Hawaiians, because it is a Native Hawaiian consultation, that if they have sensitive information, that information can be marked as confidential. However, this is a forum, and if someone is objecting because they want privacy, then they should make an appointment with you and have a meeting that is not in the public. We need a record of what our conversations are with you. So if the person and the people who don't want to be heard, they simply need to say, raise their hand and say, I don't want the camera on me at this time. But you cannot, you're denying all of us our right to have a proper administrative record.
That we're not going to be able to have the consultation meeting unless everyone agrees to put away their video and audio recording. And I certainly apologize because I recognize the perspective.
You're going to have a problem because we're not going to stay. You need us to consult with, so you need to look at how we need to be consulted. It isn't just a one-way conversation. The Navy says we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it this way. No.
That objects to being live streamed.
In fact, I'm going to start a live stream right now.
I gotta second your opinion that the note-taking, while copious, was not accurate.
Yeah.
You know, and so we will have a problem about accuracy unless we're allowed to record what is occurring and what we're saying in the room. I don't think it's an unreasonable request, given that the federal government allows for private consultation.
I'm just trying to say that I think it is not okay to attempt to deny us as consulting parties the right to keep a proper record if we choose to. You're taking the lowest common denominator and saying, oh, somebody said, and we don't even know who it is, and for all we know, it's not even somebody real, says that they don't want it, calls in and says, I don't want it, and then suddenly now all of us don't have a proper record. That is not okay, and that is not consistent, and I think you folks are going to have a problem with all of us around it.
We're going to give you an opportunity to talk amongst yourself. We certainly want to be able to consult with you here today. Hopefully in 10 minutes we'll come back and we'll address it again. But at this point we can't go forward until we can come to a consensus that there's not going to be video or audio recording.
As hard as people are trying, and it's very hard to take notes while we're talking. But I mean, just as a matter of fact, they don't even have Hawaiian translators here either. They need to have, personally, I think they need to have transcribers that are used to court reporters,
right.
And ones that are from Hawaii who are familiar with Pidgin and or Hawaiian. It allows us also to share the information with the other people on the outer islands so that they know what we're saying. This is a huge project, and why are they denying our right to make a record? And I am totally offended that they threatened to leave, because it's not my law, it's U.S. law that requires consultation with Native Hawaiians. So how are they to say they're going to leave? Then they're not fulfilling the law. I mean, this becomes a huge complaint.
And I thought it was disingenuous for two staff members to vote against it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Staff
staff members.
objecting.
The trouble is, it's not transparent. We cannot rely on their notes. That's already been proven.
Yes.
At this point, they're not legitimately engaging
No,
us
they're not.
in a genuine way. You know, and in fact, if we don't approach each other with respect, with humility, with aloha, with protocol, why are we wasting our time doing this?
I haven't even begun my testimony.
Right.
I've only been asking for protocol.
Yeah, at the beginning, just
Yeah,
how
the
we're
right
doing
protocol, because if the process lacks integrity, so will the outcome.
this. Yes.
And the main problem really is the language problem. Pidgin, I mean, once we get to talking about stuff that's compassionate, other words come out that people from the United States don't understand, they can't understand, they've never been exposed to it.
And also the nuance of the language and the way we speak. Note taking doesn't capture that.
Right.
And we have, we're an oral tradition, and that's what we said last time. Remember, Hank, we're saying we have a right to testify orally because we're an oral tradition.
Yes.
It's not just about writing a letter and sending it to you folks and making your life easy. It's about making sure that you're making our life easy to testify.
My name is Captain Kerry Abramson. I'm from the U.S. Pacific Fleet. I'm from the environmental section. We are going to continue with the consultation meeting and hopefully gather some information that would help the Navy make an informed decision. This is part of the Hawaii Southern California Training and Testing Environmental Impact Statement. It's really just a small subset of it. So under the environmental impact statement, we look at all the environmental impacts of the Navy's proposed actions, which include cultural resources, natural resources, human resources. This subset is under the National Historic Preservation Act, and so our objective today is to work with you to identify historic properties or properties of cultural and religious significance that may be in the area of potential effect. So if we identify these properties, we can work together with you to either avoid them, to mitigate any damage, or to protect them the best we know how. And so we're going to appreciate the information you provide to us, because without the information that you have, we are not going to be able to do the best we can to protect those precious resources.
Aloha. My name is Kealoha Bishoda, and I am a consulting party. I am president of Mamake Nainaho and the founder of the Marine Protection Organization Kaipalawa, and also a member of the Kia'i Kanaloa network, island-wide network, that takes care of strandings and cetaceans and marine mammals. I'm glad the military decided to stay and allow us to formulate our own administrative record if they're not going to provide verbatim notes.
It's a point at which the U.S. only has jurisdiction 12 nautical miles beyond the coastline. The state has generally 3 nautical miles, the federal government has 12.
So the area of potential effect is all through the Papahanaumokuakea.
The monument is 200
It's
miles.
200 miles.
Right, that's correct. My name is John Van Name. I work with Command of Pacific Fleet, and I'm an environmental planner. The monument is extended by President Obama to 200 miles,
Yeah.
but the Section 106 process
Only
covers to 12.
Native Hawaiian rights extend out to 200 miles in the monument. So therefore, the cultural impact would also extend out there. And it does, because there's many things out there that are of cultural and historic significance.
Aloha, I'm Hanone Ferguson. I'm the spokesperson for Nakapunamoku Kiabi, which is a group of elders from all 6 districts representing the island of Hawaii. I'm also a Nakua from Pu'ukola Iao, which was the Iao that Kamehameha used to unite the islands. Did you receive my email dated September 3rd having to do with jurisdiction? For a member of your JAGS department, your legal department, to accompany you, because there's questions of jurisdiction going on here.
And that'd be Captain Aberson. He's our legal representative.
Yeah.
My question is, who are you? what are you doing in the Hawaiian Kingdom waters? And under what jurisdiction? These are legitimate questions that I'm asking the Navy to provide legal documentation for, like a treaty of annexation or anything that gives you some kind of authority to search your jurisdiction in the Hawaiian Kingdom waters. But this question is building and building and building all over. And because I represent the kupuna, I have to have answers. That's why I made these questions public. And I would like to have an answer, or documentation would be even better. And so also in that letter, I asked for a proof or a copy of a treaty of annexation, if there is such one, or any other form of agreement that you're operating under in the territorial borders of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And if you're operating on some different premise, such as war, then I'd like a copy of the declaration of war. And if you're acting on the premises of war or occupation, then documentation stating that that's what you're doing and that you're following the Geneva and Hague Conventions on military occupations. I was hoping to see somebody from JAGS that could actually address these things front on. I don't have the liberty to not look at this.
That's our.
I'm a spokesperson for the kupuna, and I must stand with my kupuna.
Quite frankly, they're outside of this process, but even if I had received your letter, I would not be prepared, nor would I be the person authorized to respond on behalf of the Navy or the United States government. My hope is that we share information so that we can protect what is sacred to you. We can't protect what we don't understand.
Makaio Kalani Keulani Koko, Matthew Kalani Souza. I'm with the University of Hawaiian National Disaster Preparedness Training Center, FEMA, Community Outreach Specialist. I'm with NOAA. I'm a cultural competency specialist and a facilitator for them with the USGS, working with NPS, Department of Interior's National Park Services. I'm with PRIMO, the Pacific Risk Management Ohana. I'm part of the Indigenous Knowledge and Education Hui, working group of elders, and the founding director of a Hawaii State 501c3 Olohana Foundation. And that's primarily why I'm here, because we work for the community in Hamakua, along the Honoka'a coast. We signed the peace accords. We're interested in peace. I work with Peace Boat out of Japan. They now visit Hawaii, the only place under United States jurisdiction that they still visit because they're opposed to the wars that we're engaged in. I wanted to state that on record. I'm opposed to the wars we're engaged in. I think we should be engaging in peace. I mean, my charge is about how do we solve this problem? How do we draw the line? You know, rather than the lines between us as opposition. We need to have transparency. We need to engage in a real way in order to make this happen. We get that there are a lot of problems that most of us had nothing to do with, right? How do you right an unrightable wrong? McKinley was a shithead. We all get it. You know what I mean? But the fact is, we got us a problem right now that unless we find a way to resolve it, we're going to run into a problem in the international community. Now, is the United States Navy trying to tell me that China is not pushing out into the Pacific? Am I supposed to sit here and say, yeah, let the United States push out into the Pacific too? Some of us remember the tales from '43. Some of us were told those stories. I don't want to see that happen again. I'm being deadly serious here. It is unfair for two continental powers to come out into Oceania and start pushing stuff around. You come into our place and tell us, hey, let us build a war corridor. I'm sorry, I'm going to have something to say about that. This needs to be taken back to the Navy, to PACOM. They're aware of it. We're having other conversations with them about this, but we do have to make it right. And I think that's a problem. It's like this funky 800-pound gorilla in the room that all of us keep turning away from, you know what I mean? But the fact is, some other international power is going to make us look at it sooner or later. I'm recommending that we all look at it now, ourselves, that we find the solution now. But we recognize that it's there, right? That there's the problem right there. And then now let's see what we can do about the process. Because it does make the process flawed. even though the rest of us all try to engage genuinely, there's this big shadow that flaws the process. And folks in command have to be aware of that. They got to be aware that that keeps coming up, keeps coming up. How do we solve it?
And there are other countries watching this go on.
Therein is the problem.
Suit. Russia wouldn't have took over Crimea if it hadn't been for what they seen done in Hawaii.
Right, and we had a very similar conversation, particularly in Kauai, and our response was the same, that we will take this back with us and we'll be part of our discussion back up to our leadership on how the meetings went and what we took from the meetings.
The Admissions Act is a federal act. The Admissions of Hawaii, March 18th, 1959. In that act is the compact between the United States and actually the subjects of the Hawaiian Kingdom at the time. It was construed as state or territorial people, but who were the territorial people but the subjects of the kingdom? So that federal law is important for you to understand because you're a federal agency, and that compact is an equal law that you have to take into account. And that law basically, that's the Admissions Act, it's an admission of guilt, the way I refer to it, but ultimately it holds the standard that all the land in Hawaii, including the submerged land, okay, and the submerged land is quite significant, okay, are held in trust for the betterment of the condition of Native Hawaiians and the general public. So that means Native Hawaiians of 50% blood and Native Hawaiians of less than 50% blood and everyone else. Through that law, it also is where our constitutional rights and provisions come in. And why those are important is because basically the Constitution protects two things. Every person in Hawaii has a right to a clean and healthful environment, number one. And number two, it protects our cultural and traditional cultural and religious practices and uses and our resources. So the resources that we're really talking about here, and I don't even want to call them resources because they're actually sources. Just as the ocean is not a resource, it's a source of life, as our reefs are sources of life. All of those things are subject to our testimony here. It is not just that what you identify, and what I want to say, I've been saying this since we began our consultations. I've been asking you to put out Bulletin 38 and to review Bulletin 38. Bulletin 38 is to accompany 106 consultations, and that is how you treat traditional and assess traditional cultural properties that are tangible and intangible. And so far, you guys have not sent out Bulletin 38 and not informed people that they have a right to talk about the tangible and intangible things. We commented previously about the jurisdictional area that we're talking about. And the way you find that is you go to the treaties that the United States held with the Kingdom of Hawaii, and there are the metes and bounds of our territory. And that goes way beyond the 200 EEZ, 200-mile EEZ. Goes all the way to Palmyra, the remote Pacific Islands. So those are actually our boundaries. But because Papa is involved in specifically, you have to take into account all the resources within Papa. And I brought you a map. I'll try to get it to you in electronic format, but this is a map of Papa and all of the animals and the interactions with humans. Okay? So these are fish interactions, dolphin interactions, whale interactions, bird interactions, turtle interactions. Papa is the birthing ground of all green sea turtles in Hawaii. So any activity out there has to take into account all of that and all of these things here. Also, what needs to be a part of the cumulative impact are at least 5 more things that I have not seen. The longliners and how they're operating. Because basically the longliners make a circle around at least the 8 main Hawaiian islands, but even Papa, and they just drag miles of millions of hooks, and they indiscriminately take all of our fish, okay? Our fish can't even make it through. That affects our near shore, and that affects our resources, and that affects our religion and spirituality is conducted or not conducted. The aquarium trade is another one of the things that needs to be included in this cumulative and significant impact analysis. How is that affecting? It's an extraction, so you need to look at that. RIMPAC and its impact, combined with what you folks want to do, is a cumulative impact here also. Any action of any other forces, from the Air Force, whatever ocean bombing they're doing, that needs to be included. Unexploded ordnance also need to be taken into account. And the Amakua, how are they being affected by this project? And they may just be in the fish pond, but every fish pond in Hawaii needs to be a part of the analysis. All of the underwater hails and all of the underwater ko'as and ahus. Okay, and those change because sometimes people have just an area and they bring their own stone. All of the fish aggregate devices need to be taken into account too. How are those being affected by this? And the fish, the mano, the puhis, sharks, eels, seals, monk seals, honu, seabirds, whales, dolphins, all of the hihimanu, what is it? Stingray, sorry. Hihimanu and hahalua, the manta ray. All of they are being affected. Also by the longliners, just so you know. I mean, they're indiscriminately catching all of these things. So that, and then also the o'opu that she is referring to are amakua also. So are the o'opuhui, the spotted belly balloonfish? No, pufferfish. And the pufferfish with the spines. The whales and dolphins are particular importance because in our chant of creation, they actually help sing into being the humans that we see, and to also bring in the light to the world. So they emerge from the pole, the place of infinite potential. So these things are connected to the aina, but also to the people. And so because they're connected to both the aina and the people, they are going to be impacted by this kind of action, and therefore we need to protect them. The Bulletin 38 is important because it allows us to talk about those things that you may not have, they may not be physical, but they are connected and help create and make up who we are as a culture. Now, the first and foremost intangible, quote unquote, tangible, intangible thing is kanaloa. Kanaloa is the sea. Everyone knows that people of the Pacific are the people of the whale, or they're the people of the kanaloa. And so we are a nation of a large ocean. The other things that are important are the water entities, the water actual spouts of fresh water that come out. Those are sacred. And those are used actually, in some cases, to bring life or to take life. So to restore someone's life, that water has to be harvested. And so that's going to be impacted. So start with the Admissions Act, because if you don't start with the Admissions Act, we're going to go backwards. That's the compact between the United States and the people of Hawaii.
RIMPAC and exercises such as RIMPAC are, as it has been, part of our undertaking, part of our proposed action. Understand the monument's important and sacred,
Right.
but we don't go there to train. Training can go on throughout the study area, throughout the Hawaiian region, because some areas of shallow water, shallower waters for the submarines to train in that type of environment. And as And there's not much of it here, so they have to go where those types of environments exist, so they can be prepared to actually operate when they're deployed to those environments. But the majority of the training occurs in the special use airspace, the warning areas south of Oahu and west of the Big Island, or north and west of Kauai on the PMRF missile range.
And that includes the sonar?
The sonar, the bulk of the sonar occurs again in those main training areas, but sonars can be used for many reasons. We use sonar to look for mines, potential mines or obstructions or hazards on the bottom. We use similar systems that. We also use sonar to, again, detect, track, and defend ourselves from hostile submarines. Yes, the Navy uses sonar and throughout the study area.
What was how many marine mammals did it give you permission?
I'm going to be honest with you, that information is readily available online. I didn't come prepared to talk about marine mammal take numbers because this is a Section 106 consultation. It's all online. It's all on our website, HSTTEIS. The authorizations that we received from the marine mammal, from the NIMS are there. Our analyses are there. All the appendices are there. But
Jeffrey Shaw, are you using any scalar pulse weapons in your training?
Scalar pulse weapons? I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. What about other electronic, like microwave type weaponry?
No microwave type weaponry. Some laser systems that they use for defensive purposes. Small boat is coming in threateningly. They have a laser system that would target the outboard motor and disable the outboard motor. They also have these same lasers, which possibly, hopefully, if it works, can, if we have an incoming missile coming into a ship or coming into the strike group, they're looking at lasers again used for defensive purposes, and we also use lasers for targeting.
Scalar pulse.
Yeah, scalar pulse.
Yeah, that's not in our document. I really don't even know what that is, sir.
I'm Jim Albertini. I'm president of Malawaina Center for Nonviolent Education and Action. The Navy, it's documented, has dumped over 2,000 barrels, 55-gallon drums, of radioactive wastes off Oahu's southern shores. Now, it seemed like it would be a good training mission for the Navy to go and locate those drums and clean them up. Puako, barge loads of Navy bombs were dumped off of barges into the ocean after World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And when there's big surf at Hapuna, those weapons wash up on shore. Clean up your mess. Don't make new messes until you clean up your old messes. The Waikoloa maneuver area that was used for 2 years during World War II as a training area for the Army. The projected cost is $700 and some million to clean it up. At today's prices, they're only appropriating $5 to $10 million a year. So that's a $700 and some million mess from 2 years of military training.
And
again, that's one site.
Yeah,
57 that we've documented. There could be 157 on this island.
But the fact is the Navy has an atrocious record when it comes to environmental protection. I'm a trained priest in the Hawaiian way. I come from a silly backward religion that says our ancestry is a single-celled organism that began in the tidal pool. And somehow, through this weird backward thing we call evolution, we ended up getting here. So in my religion, everything in the ocean is a relative. It's not a resource. It's not something for you to be using. It's something for us to be relating to. I would think that the great traditions of the Navy would feel that same way about all things in the sea. You know what I mean? The sea is the mother to us all.